From Bye Bye Birdie to the Flintstones and, of course, co-starring with Elvis in Viva Las Vegas, Ann-Margret has had an incredibly steady career in Hollywood, spanning 6 decades.
At 84, Ann-Margret stepped onto the stage in Steel City Con and delivered a confession that shattered everything we thought we knew about Elvis Presley. For 6 decades, she carried a secret buried beneath layers of silence, loyalty, and Hollywood rumor. Tonight, you will hear the truth she refused to speak until now. Imagine 2 icons locked in a romance powerful enough to change careers, risk reputations, and rewrite history itself. That hidden affair was more than a whisper in the tabloids. It was a pact of love and protection whispered in the desert sands, sealed with promises neither of them ever expected to break. For years, Hollywood historians pieced together fragments, ignoring the one voice that mattered most. Critics wrote biographies, prying open every corner of Elvis's life, except the one that flickered brightest in Ann-Margret's memory. They speculated on his childhood, his marriages, and his addictions, yet somehow missed the woman who knew him as more than a legend. Tonight's confession rewinds the clock to 1964, to a sun-drenched film set in Sin City, where 2 stars collided and sparked a bond that shook Tinseltown. Ann-Margret stood at the threshold of fame, her red hair blazing under studio lights, her smile bright, but her heart heavy with unspoken loyalty. Elvis walked onto that stage with a swagger that defined rock and roll, yet in her eyes, he revealed vulnerability no camera ever captured. Their on-screen chemistry in Viva Las Vegas cracked open a door to a private world where laughter mingled with whispered fears, and every glance was a coded message. Off-camera, he confided in her about the pressures building like storm clouds on the horizon, a burden only she seemed willing to bear. But nothing prepared the world for the confession she made about his final days. In a voice that trembled with memory, Ann-Margret revealed a deathbed promise Elvis whispered in that dim hospital room, a vow to protect her from the fallout of fame, even if it meant sacrificing his own legacy. That pledge was more than words. It was a lifeline forged in love and fear, a secret kept safe in the pages of her private journal, until tonight. 3 weeks before his untimely passing, another piece of this hidden love story emerged. Ann-Margret uncovered a handwritten missive, a note scrawled in Elvis's unmistakable hand, confessing fears and desires he never dared voice on camera. In it, he pleaded for her understanding, apologizing for a life so public that theirs remained private and precious. That letter survived decades buried in a safety deposit box, unread by friends, family, or biographers, until last month. And then came the final whisper, the words no one expected to reach her ears. At Elvis's funeral, his father Vernon leaned close and murmured, "She was the one who saved his soul." Those words cut through the grief, echoing in her heart for decades. Until today, no one outside that dim chapel knew Vernon's private endorsement. Never published, never shared, never mentioned, until Ann-Margret stepped forward at age 84 to confirm that love had always been more than a rumor, it had been his anchor. That revelation sent shockwaves through fan communities and made headlines around the globe. Overnight, every documentary and book on Elvis's life required revision, because the one thread tying him to human vulnerability was finally acknowledged. In living rooms and online forums, fans debated the depth of their connection. Was it a fleeting Hollywood fling, or the genuine love affair whispered by a man guarding his heart? Now, as we peel back layers of rumor and myth, a clearer picture emerges of 2 souls intertwined against the glare of fame. For the first time, Ann-Margret's story stands alongside his, not in the shadow of his legend, but as a testament to enduring devotion. Her own journey, from a freezing Swedish cabin to Las Vegas limelight, mirrors Elvis's rise from Tupelo to global stardom. Both battled isolation, battled expectation, and found in each other an understanding the public never witnessed. Now her voice fills a gap in history, lending authenticity to a chapter long omitted from official archives. As we prepare to journey deeper into Ann-Margret's revelations, we'll examine the handwritten note that lays bare Elvis's hidden doubts and desires. We'll revisit that fateful hospital room where a solemn promise was etched between 2 hearts under the weight of mortality, and we'll capture the intimate moment at Vernon's side, where a father's whisper would echo through time. Join us in the next section as we unravel the story behind these revelations, explore their impact on Hollywood's golden era, and uncover the legacy of a secret love that refused to remain hidden. Before we delve into the handwritten note, picture the moment Ann-Margret carefully unsealed it after decades of silence. Passed over in biographers' archives, this fragile folded paper lay stored in a safety deposit box, waiting for its story to be told. Elvis's loops and swooping cursive filled every inch, his words drifting between longing and guilt. He confessed to fearing that fame would drown their private bond, that the spotlight would turn his devotion into a cautionary tale rather than a love story. Reading that note, Ann-Margret felt the weight of his unspoken fears, the raw vulnerability of a man hiding behind a larger-than-life image. Inside that letter, Elvis poured out a reflection rarely hinted at. He felt torn between his public persona and the woman who saw the private tears behind his gleaming smile. Lines described nights when he dreamed of quitting it all, of running away to a quiet life where Ann-Margret and he could dance under moonlight without reporters lurking. He apologized for the silences, for the studio calls that pulled him away just as their laughter reached its crescendo, yet his words always circled back to gratitude for her unwavering presence, her ability to anchor him when everything else spun out of control. That letter spoke not of superstardom, but of the fragile pulse of two hearts beating in sync, a secret symphony composed away from prying eyes. While the note revealed the depth of Elvis's affection, the true climax of this secret story lies in the deathbed promise whispered within a sterile hospital wing. Imagine Ann-Margret standing at his bedside, the crisp hospital sheets replaced by the warm sound of his muttered vow. He spoke of a devotion so fierce he demanded she protect the narrative of their love, even if it meant burying the truth until the world was ready. That solemn pledge became her guiding star, compelling her to stay silent while rumors swirled. The gravity of that moment shaped every decision she made, from avoiding press junkets to turning down lucrative interviews, safeguarding a love she believed deserved sanctity above all else. At Elvis's funeral, in that hushed Memphis chapel, another layer of this hidden saga was revealed. Surrounded by mourners draped in grief, Vernon Presley took Ann-Margret aside, his eyes clouded with fatherly sorrow. No cameras, no scribes, just the solemn memory of a loss that felt both public and intensely private. He leaned close and said words that lingered in her heart for 61 years. She was the one who saved his soul. That confession reframed everything. A father's validation elevated their bond from scandalous rumor to a profound emotional lifeline. Vernon's acknowledgement confirmed what Ann-Margret already knew in her bones, that in Elvis's darkest hours, she was his refuge, the only person whose love could guide him home. News of these confessions spread like wildfire. Social media lit up with fans re-examining photos for hidden glances, online forums buzzing with impassioned theories. Some called it the missing piece of the Presley puzzle, others dismissed it as romantic embellishment. But the authenticity of Ann-Margret's memories held weight, no studio exaggeration, no PR spin. Here was the primary witness, recounting events untouched by tabloid sensationalism. Her reputation for integrity, shaped by decades of disciplined discretion, lent credibility few anticipated. As historians scrambled to update timelines, and podcasters lined up to discuss the fallout, one question dominated. If this love was so real, why was it hidden for so long? The answer lies in a world where image is everything, and vulnerability is the enemy of myth. Elvis Presley, the king, existed in a realm of demand and expectation, where any hint of personal entanglement could weaken the carefully curated facade. Ann-Margret, by contrast, thrived on authenticity yet understood the unspoken rules of Hollywood discretion. Their pact was born from mutual respect. She would preserve his public persona, and he would trust her alone with his truth. Until now, that trust prevented her from speaking. In the glare of cameras and the sting of gossip columns, they crafted an oasis of privacy. It was a fragile agreement, sustained by love and bound by fear that revelation could destroy everything they had built. But the curtain has lifted. Ann-Margret's willingness to step into the light, with the weight of her memories, is more than a confession. It's a reclamation of her own legacy. By sharing these intimate details, she reshapes not only Elvis's narrative, but her own, inviting us to reconsider the stories we accept as truth. In the next section, we'll trace the fallout from her revelations, examine how Hollywood and fandom responded, and uncover what this means for the legends we thought we knew. From the moment the world learned of Ann-Margret's confession, the media machine exploded. National news broadcasts cut away from regular programming to debate the credibility of her claims, while entertainment websites scrambled to post every detail of the letter, the deathbed promise, and Vernon Presley's private whisper. Talk show hosts lined up for exclusive interviews, each vying to pin down why she chose now, 84 years old, to finally speak. Some commentators praised her bravery. They saw this revelation as a long overdue act of honesty, one that humanized two icons often reduced to caricatures. Others accused her of chasing headlines or revising history to secure her place in the spotlight. Headlines waxed sensational: Ann-Margret's shocking Elvis confession, the secret love that rocked Hollywood, and through it all the actress's guarded dignity stood in stark contrast to the clamor for salacious soundbites. Social media fandoms split into factions almost overnight. On one side, die-hard Presley devotees quoted the newly released passages from Elvis's own handwriting, tracing every syllable for hidden subtext. Fans who once dismissed Ann-Margret's role as just a co-star recast her as the missing link in Elvis's emotional life, compelled by her account to revise timelines and seek corroborating sources. On the other side, skeptics demanded proof: photos, additional letters, medical transcripts. They combed through archived interviews for any sign of a clandestine romance, poring over grainy film stills for a lingering glance or a brush of hands. Hashtags trended with names of mutual acquaintances, movie producers, stunt doubles, roadies, hoping to unearth more witnesses. Debate forums buzzed with amateur detectives comparing timelines. If Elvis really delivered that note 3 weeks before his death, what scenes was he shooting? Who on set might have overheard their whispers? The viral frenzy turned private memories into public obsession. Meanwhile, scholars and biographers found themselves on the defensive. For decades, Elvis's authorized biographies had relegated Ann-Margret to a chapter on co-stars, never more than a footnote in the pageant of Presley's life. Now those footnotes demanded re-examination. Academics weighed in, citing Hollywood's long history of rewriting narratives to protect reputations. Film historians noted how studio contracts often contained morality clauses, ensuring that star romances remained hush-hush. Musicologists pointed out the absence of any lyrical nods to Ann-Margret in Elvis's post-1964 recordings, wondering if he felt compelled to keep their affair out of his art. Symposiums on celebrity culture quickly added panels on the ethics of biographical revisionism, where speakers quarreled over whether Ann-Margret's silence had been co-opted by managers like Colonel Parker or honored as a personal boundary. In journals and podcasts, analysts pondered the broader implications. When a myth unravels, does the fandom that worships icons collapse too? Back in Hollywood, Ann-Margret's revelation prompted an immediate wave of opportunity and caution. A streaming service executive privately pitched a limited series, starring an actress to play her younger self opposite a Presley super impersonator. One rolling offer came from a podcast network eager to dramatize the letter's contents in episodic form. Yet the actress remained wary of re-entering the relentless churn of celebrity publicity. Lawyers for the Presley estate floated the possibility of legal action to block the publication of the private letter, creating a tense standoff between legacy guardians and the living witness. Through it all, Ann-Margret's own statements were measured. She granted only a handful of interviews, choosing a respected cultural outlet for an in-depth sit-down rather than a flurry of late-night spots. In each appearance, she declined to sensationalize her story, focusing instead on the themes of love, loyalty, and the emotional toll of fame, reminding audiences that behind every headline is a lifetime of untold grief and joy. As the dust settled, the revelation began reshaping both artists' legacies. For Elvis, the confession introduced a vulnerability previously concealed behind jumpsuits and gyrating hips. Fans discovered a new dimension: the king as a man torn between public adulation and private devotion. His image shifted from invincible trooper to devoted lover, a nuance that altered the tone of his recorded interviews and deepened the poignancy of his final performances. For Ann-Margret, the late confession elevated her role from supporting actress to custodian of one of rock history's most intimate stories. Suddenly, retrospectives on her career emphasized her emotional intelligence as much as her talent, her ability to hold space for a superstar's secret sorrows, to balance the demands of fame while protecting a precious bond. These events also forced a reckoning with how we consume celebrity history. Documentaries now faced a choice: cling to archival footage and authorized testimonies, or embrace the messy reality of personal memory. Streaming platforms updated episode descriptions to include Ann-Margret's first-hand account. Biographers scrambled to include appendices of transcribed letters. In classrooms studying media and culture, professors assigned these materials as case studies in narrative control and fan engagement. Meanwhile, merchandise sprouted online: limited edition prints of the legendary guitar-shaped wreath, replicas of Elvis's movie costumes priced at hundreds of dollars, and commemorative books bound in replica safety deposit envelopes. Even theme park operators teased a new roller coaster in Vegas themed around the secret romance. Through it all, Ann-Margret's courage in speaking up at 84 reminded us that time often cloaks truth in silence, and that silence can be both protective and corrosive. As her revelations settle into the archives of pop culture, they teach us to question the stories we inherit, and to honor the voices who reserve the right to speak when they choose. In our next section, we will examine how this confession ripples into today's entertainment landscape: new creative projects, legal battles over private correspondence, and the enduring power of a promise whispered long ago in a hospital room. Now the film and television worlds are racing to reshape their own narratives around Ann-Margret's revelations. A major streaming platform is already in talks to develop a 6-part limited series, blending dramatized flashbacks with genuine archival footage. In confidential presentations, executive producers pitched scenes illustrating the shared laughter on the Viva Las Vegas set, the hushed corridor conversation before that deathbed promise, and the private moment at Vernon Presley's side in the Memphis chapel. Early storyboards show Ann-Margret standing under flickering street lamps in Sin City, tossing her auburn hair as Elvis grips her hand and swears an oath that binds them forever. Producers promise audiences a complete reconstruction, from the clipped accents of her Swedish childhood to the crescendo of his final performance in Las Vegas. Casting directors have begun searching for a young actress who can sing, dance, and channel Ann-Margret's trademark spark, as well as a Presley impersonator who can capture both hip-shaking bravado and hidden vulnerability. The proposal insists on consulting with Ann-Margret herself daily, ensuring that dialogue echoes her own words, and that every archival image is handled with reverence. Meanwhile, inside courtrooms and boardrooms, legal teams for the Presley estate are scrambling to assert control over private correspondence. Letters sealed in that safety deposit box are now ground zero for an intellectual property showdown. The estate argues that Elvis's handwriting and personal confessions, never intended for public eyes, constitute proprietary material subject to copyright laws and privacy protections. Their lawyers maintain that unveiling such letters without explicit permission breaches both contractual clauses and moral rights long respected by Hollywood insiders. Conversely, Ann-Margret's counsel contends that her memories and the letters themselves belong in the public domain as historically significant artifacts. They've petitioned federal courts to rule that her decades of silence and subsequent testimony grant her the right to publish these personal communications. The tension reached a fever pitch when a judge granted a temporary injunction blocking the publication of the letter's full text, citing potential emotional harm to surviving Presley family members. That injunction is slated for appeal, with fans and historians watching every docket entry like chapters in an unfolding drama. In the court of public opinion, podcasts and fan-driven channels have filled the void left by legal ambiguity. Upstart audio programs routinely feature guest historians, reading short excerpts of the note under legal thresholds and dissecting every phrase for hidden meaning. One popular podcast called Beyond the Graceland Gates released a special mini-series in which the hosts traced the exact trajectory of that motorcycle ride that broke down in the desert. They even commissioned a forensic handwriting expert to analyze ink density and paper type, speculating on the emotional state Elvis might have been in when he wrote those lines. Social media influencers have created interactive timelines on Instagram stories, overlaying set photographs, movie stills, and newspaper clippings to map out the days leading up to each moment of revelation. Fans debate whether the note's mention of running away referenced an actual plan or a metaphor for emotional escape. Online petitions call on the estate to release the note in full, while rival petitions demand its permanent suppression. This virtual tug-of-war underscores a new reality: audiences no longer passively consume celebrity lore, they co-create it, demanding transparency, authenticity, and involvement at every turn. Amid this fervor, academic circles have seized upon the confession as a case study in fame, secrecy, and the construction of personal mythology. University courses on media studies and celebrity culture are adding modules examining the interplay between silence and spectacle. Professors assign students to analyze how the original official Elvis narrative omitted emotional complexity and how Ann-Margret's testimony disrupts that narrative framework. Journals in communication studies have published peer-reviewed articles on the ethical dimensions of disclosing private letters decades later. Some scholars even draw parallels to historical examples, like wartime codebreakers safeguarding intelligence or royal courts protecting monarchical reputations, arguing that the Presley Pact resembles a form of emotional espionage. Symposiums scheduled at film festivals and academic conferences plan panels entitled "When Lovers Rewrite History and Consent, Memory and the Public Right to Know." In each instance, Ann-Margret's voice serves as the catalyst for deeper reflection on how stories are curated, controlled, and ultimately reclaimed. Through it all, Ann-Margret remains both the architect and guardian of her own legacy. She has declined offers for magazine covers that promise lurid details, insisting instead on publishing her memoir in a reputable literary imprint known for historical accuracy. In private conversations, she emphasizes that her goal is not to sensationalize but to humanize. She wants readers to understand the toll secrecy took on her spirit, the weight of holding another person's truth as dear and dangerous, and the quiet strength required to preserve a promise whispered at moment of death. Excerpts from her forthcoming memoir have revealed previously unknown chapters: her efforts to conceal that hand-scrawled letter from intrusive studio lawyers, the nights she awoke drenched in sweat imagining the world discovering her confession too soon, and the solace she found decades later in small acts of service far from the camera's gaze. As legal battles loom and creative projects move into production, one thing becomes clear: the interplay between fame and privacy will never be the same. Ann-Margret's choice to speak at 84 reframes a golden age romance not as a scandalous fling but as a profound testament to love's resilience in the face of relentless scrutiny. Whatever final form her story takes, be it streaming drama, legal precedent, or the pages of her own memoir, it reminds us that history is not only the sum of its public moments, but also the hidden notes turned toward a single confidant. And that deafening silence, once guarded at the peak of a superstar's career, can echo louder than any spotlight. Beyond the glare of cameras and the swirl of courtroom drama, Ann-Margret has retreated to a quiet sanctuary of reflection. In the soft light of her Santa Monica home, walls lined with photographs of her storied past, she revisits memories both tender and turbulent. Each framed image is more than a snapshot; it is a fragment of a promise she once carried alone. Now, with the world listening, she confronts the emotional toll of a secret that defined her career and shaped her heart. In early interviews, she described the weight of holding Elvis's deathbed vow. She confessed how sleep eluded her for months, haunted by the echo of his whispered words. Anxiety became a constant companion. Every phone ring might herald a subpoena, every knock a revelation she dreaded. Yet she also spoke of solace found in small routines: a walk along the Malibu shore, the steady rhythm of ocean waves reminding her that time and tide eventually bring healing. Those moments of calm fueled her resolve, transforming her fear into the courage to finally share a truth she believed would set both their legacies free. Ann-Margret has often highlighted the parallels between their journeys. Both rose from humble beginnings, she from a frigid Swedish village and he from a modest Mississippi home, only to be launched into planetary fame. Both understood the double-edged sword of public adoration: the higher you fly, the harsher the fall when you stumble. In her upcoming memoir, she writes of her fascination with his resilience and his empathy, qualities that surfaced beneath sequined jumpsuits and sold-out arenas. She realized their bond was forged not just from attraction, but from a shared understanding of fame's burden. As this confession reverberates through Hollywood, Ann-Margret has drawn strength from one guiding principle: authenticity is more powerful than illusion. She recalls how, during filming, Elvis would slip away to speak truth amid scripted lines, using their private conversations as emotional recalibration. His willingness to shed the performative mask inspired her own artistic choices, leading her to roles that demanded honesty over glamour, such as her Emmy-nominated turn on Law & Order, SVU. She credits him for teaching her that vulnerability on screen could resonate more deeply than flawless technique. Yet reconciling her own mythos with the new revelations has not been without cost. Friends describe a period of introspection as she rewrote personal history in public view. Loneliness resurfaced when old confidantes wondered why she had remained silent so long. Rumors reignited, and unfounded allegations threatened to eclipse her lifetime of accomplishments. In response, she leaned on a small circle of trusted allies: her longtime manager, a handful of family members, and her spiritual community, who helped her navigate this second reckoning with the past. Throughout it all, Ann-Margret has insisted that love and loyalty need not be mutually exclusive with truth. In one poignant interview, she compared her silence to a rose pressed in the pages of a book, beautiful, but flattened by time and secrecy. Finally, she chose to remove that flower, letting its delicate petals crumble in the light, so that a new story could blossom. She described the release of her burden as akin to stepping into open air after decades in a gilded cage, breathing freely despite the glare of witnesses. Her reflections now extend beyond her own life. She offers counsel to younger artists facing their own crossroads between privacy and publicity. In recent talks at arts education centers, she has advised emerging performers to safeguard their personal narratives, yet also to recognize that sometimes, revealing vulnerability can forge deeper connections with audiences. She urges them to consider the long arc of their legacy, asking what part of your story will best serve the art you want to share with the world. Ann-Margret's voyage from silent guardian to outspoken narrator underscores a broader shift in celebrity culture. No longer can stars simply rely on studio edicts or publicists to sculpt their images. Audiences crave unvarnished truth, and will push for it through social media, legal channels, or direct appeals. In this new landscape, she stands as both pioneer and cautionary tale, a woman who honored a solemn vow for decades, then discovered that revealing the secret could expand rather than diminish her own humanity. As we prepare to conclude this journey, we turn our gaze to the lasting impact of Ann-Margret's confession. How will this story shape the way Hollywood conceives love, loyalty, and legacy? What lessons will directors, biographers, and fans carry forward? In our final section, we will explore the future of their intertwined legacies, the series and memoirs yet to come, the possible resolutions of legal battles, and the enduring power of a promise that finally found its voice.